Hey everyone, welcome back to LMX, the channel where we break down today's hottest political stories. Today we're diving into one of South Africa's most pressing debates, the budget controversy. With Finance Minister Godongwana's proposals sparking fierce criticism from the DA and even Fikile Mbalula calling them out for not having the people's interest at heart, what does this mean for our country? And more importantly, what are the coalition options on the table? Stay tuned as we break it all down. Let's start with the big question. Why is the DA so vehemently against this budget? At the heart of it, the DA argues that the budget's priorities, its spending allocations and policy directions, do not align with their vision for a more fiscally responsible and economically liberal South Africa. They're not just questioning the numbers, but the very ideology behind the spending. Critics within the DA have claimed that this budget is tailored to serve political interests, rather than the needs of ordinary South Africans. Fikile Mbalula, for example, has publicly slammed the DA, accusing them of lacking any genuine commitment to the people's welfare. He argues that when it comes to making tough decisions that affect our daily lives, the DA's stance seems more politically driven than rooted in any substantive policy or economic plan. So, what's really going on? On one side, the DA wants transparency, efficiency, and a budget that, in their view, invests in the right sectors to spur economic growth. On the other side, the current budget, as presented by Godongwana, is seen by its critics as overreaching, potentially putting too much emphasis on populist spending and political patronage. This clash of ideologies is causing deep divisions within our political landscape. Now imagine this. If the budget doesn't pass, what does that mean for South Africa? The consequences could be far-reaching. First off, failing to pass a budget would create immediate uncertainty. Government spending on essential services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure might come to a halt, causing ripples across all sectors. In economic terms, uncertainty often spooks investors. We could see a drop in investor confidence, leading to a slowdown in economic activity. With our currency and markets already under pressure from various factors, an unpassed budget would only add fuel to the fire. Public services may be disrupted, and the country could experience significant instability at a time when unity is crucial. Politically, a failed budget vote sends a stark message: deep fractures exist within the ruling coalition. Such a breakdown not only hampers the government's ability to govern, but also paves the way for further political maneuvering and uncertainty, both domestically and on the international stage. In short, it's a scenario that no one wants to see, but it's becoming increasingly likely unless a compromise is reached. With the DA's resistance in full display, a critical question arises: should the ANC reach out to the EFF and MKP instead? At first glance, these parties might seem more ideologically aligned with some of the current budget proposals. After all, both the EFF and MKP have a history of pushing for radical economic policies that, in some ways, overlap with the budget's populist tones. However, we have to consider the broader implications. The EFF, known for its anti-establishment rhetoric and uncompromising stance, might provide the necessary votes, but at the cost of pushing the agenda further to the left. Would that be a welcome shift for a government already wrestling with deep internal divisions? And what about MKP? While not as high profile as the EFF, their position in the political spectrum might still create friction with traditional ANC policies. On one hand, approaching these parties could help salvage the budget vote by bringing in more ideologically sympathetic allies. On the other hand, aligning too closely with them might alienate key segments of the electorate, including moderates who favor stability over radical change. This is a classic case of the lesser of two evils versus sticking to core principles. The ANC is caught between needing votes to pass essential legislation and maintaining a coherent policy identity that resonates with the broader public. Let's zoom out a bit and ask, can the Government of National Unity, the GNU, function without the likes of the DA, EFF, and MKP? The GNU was designed to be a broad-based coalition, drawing on multiple perspectives to steer the country through challenging times. Yet if key voices remain at odds or worse, absent, how stable is the system? If the DA continues to oppose the budget, and if both the EFF and MKP are either too radical or ideologically incompatible, the GNU could end up being more of a loose alliance than a cohesive government. This scenario risks paralyzing decision-making processes at a time when swift action is needed. In the end, it might lead to a governance crisis, where policies are constantly negotiated and watered down, preventing any substantial reform. A GNU that functions without these parties might operate in theory, but in practice, political alliances matter. Without broad-based support, even the best-planned budget can falter, leaving the country in a state of limbo. Now we get to the million-dollar question: should the ANC leave the GNU altogether and form a coalition exclusively with the EFF and MKP, or is there a better strategy? One option could be to simply invite the EFF and MKP to join the GNU, in essence, asking them to work within the existing framework, rather than creating a new, potentially more volatile alliance. The advantage of this approach is that it maintains some semblance of the status quo. It avoids a dramatic realignment that could further polarize voters and lead to unpredictable policy shifts. However, if the ideological rift with the DA is too wide to bridge, perhaps the ANC should consider a new coalition model. This would mean sidelining the DA and possibly even parts of the GNU to create a government more aligned with its current fiscal and political vision. It's a delicate balancing act. On one hand, distancing from the DA could be seen as a vote of no confidence in traditional opposition voices, potentially leaving the country with fewer checks and balances. On the other hand, forming a coalition with parties that might push the agenda further left, like the EFF, runs the risk of alienating the moderate electorate who wants stability and continuity. In the end, the decision comes down to priorities. Is it more important to ensure the passage of the budget at all costs? Or should there be a broader conversation about the kind of policies we want to see in South Africa's future? Each option has its own set of risks and benefits, and the coming weeks will likely see intense negotiations behind closed doors as these political titans weigh their next moves. So what do you think? Is the DA's opposition a calculated move to push for a more fiscally conservative approach, or is it a power play that could ultimately cost the country dearly if the budget falls through? And should the ANC reconfigure its alliances, maybe by inviting the EFF and MKP into the GNU, or even by forming a new coalition altogether? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on what this means for South Africa's political future. If you enjoyed this deep dive into our current budget crisis and the shifting coalitions, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Stay tuned to LMX for more updates as this story develops. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and keep the conversation going.